Your support makes this Miracle Channel program possible.
Only a life that has been through challenges can be filled with the reward of victory. Today on The Bridge, Greg Van Riper shares his childhood story of dysfunction and abuse within the foster care system and how God showed him the way back to his heart.
Welcome to The Bridge. Today we're going to be talking about another very sensitive subject, Val. We're talking about ministering to victims of abuse. You know, Val, I love to watch these home improvement channels and networks and people doing all sorts of things. And there was a program on recently about someone who was restoring an antique fireplace, a mantle in a colonial era home. And they were doing it so diligently. They were actually taking a dental pick. Something surgical like that. And they were meticulously peeling away layers of paint that had been placed on this mantle. And what they had done was they had envisioned what the maker of that mantle had wanted for the centerpiece of this home. And they were determined to uncover it, to peel away all the years of paint and abuse and everything else that was involved. You see, they were uncovering what the master carver had originally created. And this, to me, is such a beautiful picture of ministry to victims of abuse.
Absolutely, because you have to go, like you said, with a pick, a fine-tooth comb, and you've got to uncover the layers of pain, the humiliation, the shame, the disillusionment that has been put upon these people, so that what can come forth is the masterpiece of God. Because we're all fearfully and wonderfully created, and God has a plan and a purpose and a destiny for each human being. So this is what we want to discuss today, but the first point we need to mention is like that ice pick. That took patience. And when you're dealing with patients that have been abused, it takes patience, and you've got to be consistent.
It's true, because there are no quick, easy fixes.
No, there aren't.
So it requires patience on our part. It requires commitment that we're going to stay with it and stay with them, because that really ministers healing when they see somebody is not going to give up on me.
Well, they're developing a relationship.
That's right,
and
trust.
And that's important,
It's
Another
huge.
one is help them identify and share the emotions, because sometimes they don't even know how to do that. They don't know how to share their emotions. They don't even know how to put them into words.
Well, you know, Val, so often when we're trying to minister to people, we want to rush in with what we consider to be the right fix. And we really haven't given them the opportunity to express the pain, the damage, the feelings that they've been through. That's why this is so important in ministering to victims of abuse.
But because, you know, they've got feelings even with their family and so forth and friends. And then we've got to let them grieve the losses. Allow them to have the opportunity, whether it's losing something or somebody.
Well, you know, when you lose a part of your life to abuse, it is very similar to losing another person. You could have lost your childhood, your youth, a marriage, a career, whatever it may be. So people deserve the time to grieve. That's why, once again, we need to be so patient, so diligent, so that we can uncover what God has created, His creative will for their lives, regardless of how it may have been covered up by abuse. This is going to be a very, very important program. We're going to help you build some bridges to victims of abuse.
Coming up, hear a true story of a child who the system forgot, but God did not.
The Miracle Channel needs you. We're a nonprofit organization that relies on the generosity and support of our volunteers, viewers, and friends. To make a donation today, go to miraclechannel.ca or call 403-380-3399.
Faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see.
Connect with Fred and Val Bennett on Facebook. Hosts of The Bridge, Fred and Val invite viewers and partners to send their friend invites and join in building bridges with ministries and people across the nations and beyond. Go to facebook.com and sign up today. Again, I tell you that if two of you on earth agree about anything you ask for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. Do you have a calling in your life to pray? Join together with thousands of faithful partners across the nation on the Miracle Channel's national prayer team. Submit prayer requests and praise reports anytime, day or night. Sign up today, go to miraclechannel.ca and click on the link.
Today we're so very blessed to have Greg Van Riper here on the program. He has written a marvelous book entitled Throwaway Children. And this comes from his experience of a very difficult childhood and what he went through in foster care. Greg, we so appreciate you being here with us today and sharing your heart on a very, very sensitive subject.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome to the program. But what caused you to want to write this story about your childhood and all the time you spent in foster care?
Well, I would share bits of my testimony with other people regarding some of the trials and challenges that I'd gone through in my past. And people would just say, wow, you should get that down on paper, or you should write a book. And so this went on for a few years, and I thought, okay, here I go. I'm writing my book, and it probably took in between, off and on, I worked on it for about 5 years.
Really?
And this became the result. So, yeah.
Well, how did this whole journey start for you? How did you end up in foster care?
Well, when I was about 12 years old, well, before that, when I was 9, my parents had gotten divorced, and they separated, and I went to live with my mom, and my dad moved to another part of town. And I started running, by age 12, I just started running with the wrong crowd, and I started smoking and drinking and smoking drugs and stealing and just getting into trouble. And so eventually it got to a point where the police were always at my home, and my mom couldn't deal with the stress and the problems anymore. And my dad was drinking quite heavily at the time, and so foster care ended up being the result, where my mother just felt that maybe it would do me some good. And so I ended up being institutionalized actually in Lethbridge here in Sifton for 6 months.
Wow.
When I was 12.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow. What did that feel like, Greg?
Very scary being away from my mom and my family at such a young age. And
why did you rebel that much?
just got in with the wrong crowd of kids and just started doing things I shouldn't have been doing, and I was apprenticing for the wrong trade, and
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
I just got in with the wrong people and started making poor choices.
Were you angry with your parents about being institutionalized?
I think I was, yes. Yeah, I wanted to be with my mom or be with my dad, and that was difficult at that time. My dad was working on pipelining, and he was away quite a bit, and my mother was working full-time at that time, and so maybe I wasn't getting as much attention as I should have from my mom and dad. And so I developed really deep-seated anger over the course of the 3 years I was in institutions and foster homes, and that would have been my most difficult hurdle to overcome through my life, was my anger.
Right.
Yes.
So this would be the normal process. A child would be institutionalized until they find someone to take them into a home foster care.
Depending on what their situation was, if they were a child who was involved in theft and things like that, I imagine it would go that course. If it was a child who was given up for adoption and then they didn't have a place for them, they might just be placed into a receiving home or a foster home and not necessarily be a child who acts up and the child might stay there for years without any problem.
Right.
So how did that impact your life, being institutionalized and in and out? And
Well, going from home to home and being in places where nobody wanted me, it really made me feel unloved, and it produced a lot of instability in me. I was bounced around into different schools and different homes, and there were foster places where the people didn't want me at the very beginning, and they didn't know what they were going to do with me because they had heard about some of the things I had done. And so they had made up their mind, and I was blackballed before even the first night I
But
had
it's
slept
kind of
there.
strange, here they are foster parents, and they're supposed to take in children, and yet they resent the fact that children come. I don't understand that.
Well, I guess some kids are more high maintenance than others, and so they were probably looking at the amount of maintenance compared to the dollar figure perhaps, or I'm not sure how they measured it, but that would have been a factor they would have considered, I imagine.
Right, yeah. So they don't get to choose who the children are going to be, foster care parents.
I believe they do to a certain point, yeah. Yeah, if the social worker would bring it to the foster parent and say, look, we have this kid here who was involved in this, or we have a kid who was going up for adoption. He's 7 years old and nobody wants him. So they would, I imagine they would be able to pick who they wanted to stay in their home.
Yeah.
And so they would also be able to determine how long they would be able to stay there too. So,
Oh, okay.
because you could become a ward of the government permanently or for 6 months at a time, right?
Oh, okay.
So
So did you try to make some changes in order to get out of the foster care system?
I ran away constantly. I kept running back to Medicine Hat, and I'd phone my mom and say, Mom, look, I want to come home to stay there. And she just wouldn't have any of that right then, because I'd just been taken from the home, and it was only a few months, and so she knew that no changes had occurred in me in order for things to change at home to have.
But then you ended up in a Christian home. How was that?
Well, when my social worker was driving me out to the foster home farm that I was at, I ended up staying there for 2 years, and I didn't really know where I was going. He had just come down to my school in Medicine Hat, and they had taken me out of the classroom and said, go down to the office. I went down there, and the social worker said, go upstairs and grab all your belongings. You're being moved from the foster home you're presently at in Medicine Hat to a foster home out on a farm. And so when we were driving out there, I didn't know if it was a Christian home or not. And when I got out there, the one of the older kids, he took me down to where the hay stacks were, and we started loading hay into the cow barn. And already I hated the place. I didn't want to be there, right? Because I didn't want to do any hard work.
Right.
And being on a farm was hard work, right? And so as I was rolling this bale that was probably just as heavy as I was was looking off to the distance and seeing my social worker driving off the farm, and I thought, boy, I just like to run up there and get out of here right now. And
Wow. What a story. Well, we want you to tell more of this story, and also want you to know that Greg has very generously decided to bless the first callers. We have a limited number of copies of his book, Throwaway Children. Call us, 403-320-0011, and Greg wants to bless you with a copy of his book. We'll be right back.
Coming up next, find out how Greg Van Riper overcame the abuse and abandonment he suffered as a child when The Bridge returns.
Did you know that the Miracle Channel is now on Facebook and Twitter? Log on today and keep up with what is happening at your Miracle Channel. Watch for updates on live events, conferences, and upcoming Miracle Channel news. Leave your comments and suggestions on our wall. It's easy to join. Just go to facebook.com and become a fan. Or follow us at twitter.com. Become a friend of the Miracle Channel. Sign up today and get connected.
Again, I tell you that if two of you on earth agree about anything you ask for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. Do you have a calling in your life to pray? Join together with thousands of faithful partners across the nation on the Miracle Channel's National Prayer Team. Log on and view prayer requests and praise reports given by other people. Make the National Prayer Team a part of your daily prayer time with the Lord. Submit your own prayer